Mike McAllister, great to connect with you and catch up. I'm excited to get into what you're working on.
That's cool. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you're one of these folks who I've been following and really enjoying your work for probably well over a decade at this point. But you and I actually just only got to work together in the last year or two and got to know each other a bit. But I would say my impression of you and your work is like I'm always constantly in envy, like creative envy of like design, like it just seems like you're in this like creative studio over there, just like constantly churning out like high caliber, looks like really fun work. Looks like you really love the work that you do. That's my general impression of what you do.
Wow, that's yeah, that is not necessarily the vibe that I'm trying to put off, but I love that that's what somebody's picked up from that, and some of that is obviously largely true. So yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, I want to kind of jump around as I always do in these conversations, but like, why don't we just start with 2024?
hmm
I see you working on this thing called Ollie. You're doing some design consulting projects, branding stuff. Yeah, what are you focused on right now?
Yeah, I think you and I share so many qualities as creators, makers, constant doers, and that yeah, I'm doing all kinds of stuff, and some of it is to fund other stuff, some of it's creative pursuits, some of it's pent up creative aggression that I'm trying to get out. But right now, as you mentioned, I spent 4.5 years working at WP Engine, which is a big hosting company. And I sold them my products, my company. I worked there for 4 years, and largely I wasn't doing creative projects. I was a principal software engineer, so I was doing a lot
Hmm.
of high level stuff, a lot of mentoring, product shaping, things like that. And so as a deeply creative person and a designer at heart, that was hard to kind of sit there for 4 years and not be able to do that, and sort of almost at the same time be told like that's not your role here. We have a design team. So
Yeah, I,
um,
I actually I really want to get into that whole chapter of your career, maybe later
mhm.
here. But actually, like, how long has it been since you left WP Engine? How long have you been out on your own this current time?
Almost a year. I left April of last year, and
Oh, okay.
so yeah, so it's been almost a year, and it's been incredible. So yeah, after leaving there, I just had so many ideas and creative energy, and so I kind of hit the ground running and ran into you right away. You were the first project, the Clarity Flow project, that we partnered on,
Oh, wow.
where
I
it
didn't
was.
realize that. I didn't
Mhm.
realize you had left WP Engine so recently. I sort of had this impression that you were out on your own like for a while at that point.
No,
But
nope, nope. I
oh,
just,
cool.
it's like, as many people know, once you're in a job like that, you find all kinds of reasons to stay. The job security, salary, health insurance is a huge thing here in the
Hmm.
U.S., and so I stayed
And
probably
also just like
longer.
real quick,
But
like for folks who are
mhm.
listening and maybe don't know your whole story, like before all that, you had a successful like WordPress themes business
Yeah. hmm
called Array Themes. That was when I first started kind of following your work, and that was what was acquired by WP Engine.
Yeah, so yeah, for 10 years, better part of 10 years before that, I was doing WordPress products, and I had a popular theme collection called Array. But actually, what they were really interested in was WordPress at that time was going through that big transition to the block editor. And, having built in WordPress for so long and wanted some kind of better kind of interface for this, I saw that thing coming and I was like, holy shit, this thing is going to be huge. It's a huge product opportunity. And so I
Hmm.
started building this thing called Atomic Blocks, which was basically these content blocks, different kinds of various dynamic content, things like that, um, that you could throw into the block editor and get cool designs out of. So I was building that, and I was also kind of using it as like an educational tool. So it was all open source, and I was writing all these articles about it, and it gained a lot of momentum very quickly. It was like one of my fastest growing products, and I hadn't even brought it to market yet, but I was working on like a pro version of it, and that's ultimately what WP Engine wanted. They saw the value in sort of the momentum of this thing, and they saw the value of like this block editor's coming, and we're going to need something to kind of compete in that space. And so,
Yeah. Makes
and
a
it
lot
was
of
like,
sense.
it was like an acqui-hire thing too. I think they wanted the product, but they wanted somebody to kind of shepherd it through this transition and figure out how to wedge something like that into their offering and their kind of their product space.
Interesting. I guess maybe. All right. So again, I'm not very prepared for today's conversation. Like I
It's
never
all
am.
good.
But it's funny because that atomic blocks thing. I think that was probably around the time that I started to like tune out of WordPress in
Sure.
general.
Hmm.
I knew you and array themes from a little bit before that, and then I started to venture into like other things, and I sort of took like an 8-year break from WordPress, and then
Sure.
um, yeah, I feel like a lot of craziness has happened in that whole
Oh,
space during
yeah,
that time.
totally.
Um, so okay, so WP Engine sort of acquires your Atomic Blocks product and also sort of acqui-hires you. You
Yep.
come in there, and I I'm not familiar with how that whole dynamic tends to work, right? Like when your product is acquired, I'm guessing there's like some component that's like a nice cash exit for you, but
Yeah.
it's
Hmm.
also like a job offer.
Yeah, there's like usually how it works is like there's a holdback. You get a certain amount up front and then a certain amount after a certain amount of time. In some
Yep.
companies, it's dependent on you being there for a while. I think mine was like 18 months. I'm
Mm-hmm.
there 18 months and then I get the other half of it. And so that was my initial, obviously, like reason for being there. But they also paint a like pretty rosy picture for you about like, oh, you come in, you'll get all these marketing resources. They really like sweeten the deal for you. They try to like really make
And
it
and
seem
was it
successful.
like you're gonna come in and join us and continue working on Atomic Blocks here?
Yeah, that was the promise for sure. That
Mm-hmm.
was the like thing, but honestly, it I think in companies like that, there's always people who have ideas of like that's what they want to do, and then the reality of like, well, really our bottom line is hosting or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe WP Engine is they have all kinds of different products, but they're still
They're a
figuring
host.
out how to do products. Yeah, at the end of the day, that's where the money comes from, and that's kind of what it goes back to. And so
Hmm.
we didn't do hardly any work on atomic blocks. So I was kind of bummed on that because having that be kind of one of my fastest growing products in a space that was just so new and defining itself, and to sort of have that opportunity to sort of shape the direction of something was like an awesome opportunity. And I was kind of bummed
Yeah,
to see it kind of just go to the wayside. But
man.
that's
Like
that's what happens in these things.
I know it's been a few years, and maybe there's some things you can't talk about or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
this does seem like to be one of those like black box things that I certainly don't have a lot of transparency into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you see it so often. Like
Yep.
really great product gets acquired by really big company, and they somehow shut the product down,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like why does that happen? You would think like in theory all these resources and the reach of WP Engine, like it would take a product like Atomic Blocks and see it spread.
Yeah.
But it sounds like to what you're saying, and I still don't fully understand like how the dynamic works internally there. But like, okay, I get that they have like a bottom line of like we just want to get more customers on the hosting platform. Does that translate into like I'm thinking of like lots of like middle managers who make the decision to like
Yes.
de budget the projects
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Atomic Blocks and instead take their quote unquote resources and put you on like these other projects.
Yep. Yeah. And like, you're right. We see it like all the time. I just see the conversation's been kicked up again about CSS Tricks, which was one of the biggest like CSS websites and bought by DigitalOcean, and then it just like sat there, and I think that's a
Yeah.
sad state of affairs. But yeah, I think with WP Engine particularly, and this is no shade at them. I want to be able to talk about this stuff and be honest, but like With
And I was
them,
I was not I don't have WordPress sites anymore, but when I did, I was a WP Engine customer for
yeah,
probably a
I
decade,
mean,
something like that. Yeah.
they have all kinds of incredible clients and they do their hosting well. They're like really good at that. But with a product like Atomic Blocks or even the Array theme collection, what happens is kind of what you alluded to. There's so many people involved from all the way up to the VP of product. Then you got to go through a director and then managers and then product managers, senior managers, product managers, and all of these people, these stakeholders kind of have an idea and a say and sort of maybe a budget to reckon with. And also while they have these KPIs and all of these goals they have to hit. And like by the time you filter through all of that and you're looking at a product that is making $0 and needs to grow um, to make money or even grow to help onboard, it just becomes so easy to be like, let's just chuck it, let's start fresh.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you see all these companies now. It's so difficult to build something internally that they just acquire it and like acquire it with the customers and the
Hmm.
momentum and the product already built because there's so much decision fatigue and red tape and bureaucracy and politics internally to build something from the ground up is like impossible. It's so
Yeah,
hard
and I
unless you
and I
have.
could also see like the decision on like for the amount of revenue from a product like that to even make a dent in the overall revenue
Oh,
of a WP
totally.
engine. And
Yeah, I
to
mean,
someone to an independent builder like you, it could be a fantastic little business, right?
oh,
Like
absolutely. Yeah,
and
I
and,
mean,
and have a great income. But for it to even be a drop in the bucket for a huge company like that, that's when the like budget decisions or like like
yeah.
where do we put the investment in? I could see how that kind of comes down the chain, you know?
Yeah, even if it was making, even if it made a million, $2 million, $5 million a year at a company of the scale of WP Engine, that's still like room for
Yeah,
discussion about whether or not you continue that
right.
because maybe the amount of people you have around it, you break even on 5 million. So it's,
And the chain and the levels of management have to like defend their decisions on
oh,
things,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
But 5 million for me as a little company would be life
yeah,
changing, So it's
yep,
funny. The economies of scale are like totally at play there.
crazy. So
Hmm.
I mean, I'm also kind of curious about what the overall experience was for you working there in the initial years. You stayed on there for a couple more years after that,
Hmm.
even into more of a technical role, less
Yeah.
design, less creativity, but there had to be
Yeah.
like positives to it, right? Like you stayed
Oh
there
yeah.
longer than the 18
Hmm.
months.
Yeah, and there's yeah, for all the years before I ever joined there, it's back all the way back to high school. I've been grinding, working, building, creating, launching, like nonstop. And so there definitely was a value and a kind of relief to just chilling for a while and maybe checking some boxes and kind of going through somebody else's to-do list for once.
Hmm.
Um, at the same time, having the kind of momentum that I do, trying to like grab everything I can there and improve it and have a positive impact. And there was a lot of like valuable leadership stuff that I learned there and I wanted to learn. I never thought of myself as like a leader per se or a team lead, but I found that role very kind of naturally. And I think I was a good leader and kind of leading with because I had created for so long and I've kind of worked so many roles. I've designed, I've coded, I've done that. I was able to kind of lead with a sense of empathy that I think is hard to get to if you
Hmm.
come in cold because it's like, no, I've done this. I've been in the designer role. I've been developer role. I know how they work together. I know how this has to go to marketing. I know how you have to talk about things with a certain story
Hmm.
to an audience in the same way that you have to talk to a director of product. And so I think I was successful in that because of all the experience I had. But yeah, I definitely stayed, my initial allotted time. And then I think around that time, there was also some interesting things that were going on internally in terms of like, we're not doing atomic blocks, but we're starting to build tools for people who are still building things for WordPress, and that was also
Hmm.
interesting to me because it was I'm solving a different problem then, which is I love doing. I love taking these heavy problems, breaking them down, and producing something that's like, whoa, okay, that's hyper focused problem solving.
Yeah.
So
So like
yeah,
what,
we were
yeah,
able to
like
do that.
what, uh, what kind of projects were you, like, what does a project typically look like? You don't have to get into like the specific things that you were working on, but like, what, like, so higher ups are, again, like I have such limited experience in super large
Hmm.
companies because even when I was employed like 15 years ago, it was at pretty small uh, design agencies, you know? So like
Yeah,
a company like
for sure.
WP Engine, I have no vision into what that even looks like to work in an organization like that.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just like, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, I'm like, there are levels of management with priorities that come down to you, and then you and your technical and creative team there at WP Engine, you're sort of like put like, this is the goal, and you have to kind of put together the projects for your team to
Yeah.
work on. Maybe
Hmm.
fill in the gaps there.
Yeah, no, it's not too far off. And our setup was a little unique at WP Engine because they had acquired Studio Press, which was a whole other WordPress product company,
Hmm.
and mine within the same year, basically. And so what happened is you had WordPress or WP Engine, the hosting entity of WP Engine. And for those who don't know WP Engine, kind of think of it like a smaller GoDaddy. It's kind of the same idea, WordPress hosting.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine the platform side of it, the hosting side is massive. That is like 98% of the company. And then all of a sudden they have this little, this little product side of Studio Press and Array and Atomic Blocks. Um, but that is such a tiny fraction of the whole thing that we were kind of on our own little island in a way, in that it was like they didn't really know what to do with it once they bought it. It was like they're good at the hosting thing and they know they want to play in this sandbox, but they just don't know the toys very well. And so it was some ideas they had that were like, okay, maybe we can do this, but I think it was often led by our team, which I think is unique, where we had different ideas about where these things should go. And me, particularly, when I came, I had very clear visions about where that was to go. And so it was
Hmm.
my job to sort of paint that vision in a way. And sometimes that meant building out little prototypes, or just like, I probably wrote 8,000 Google Docs on this stuff because
Mm.
it's all about
A lot of memos.
communication. It's all about like, you have to have a source of truth to an idea to be able to pass around, and it's got to be consumable, and people are going to comment on it, but you have to be able to like pass your vision around. You can't
Yeah.
just have a call here and a call here and a call here. Like you have to figure out how to structure creativity and innovation and idea building, and be able to pass that around. That's a whole skill in itself, learning how to communicate in a system that is
Yeah.
like,
This, I didn't expect this episode to turn into like, what is corporate life?
it's
But
fascinating though. It really is.
but we were just joking right before this episode that like, this call is the first time that you and I actually spoke live. We've worked
Yeah.
together,
Yep.
all asynchronous with video messages and everything.
Yep.
But we're having a live call here, and
Hmm.
the other, tell me if this conception is correct, but the other vision that I have of corporate life is tons of meetings. Is
Oh,
that
tons.
when you talk about like preparing these Google Docs and communicating ideas around the organization,
Hmm.
like what does the meeting culture look like, and
Oh
how
man.
do things get done? How do things make progress? Yeah.
As much as like companies try to avoid the meetings, and it's like almost it's become such a meme, like meeting fatigue and having a meeting about a meeting, like
Right.
that is just real. It is. That's how it goes,
Mm.
because there's so many stakeholders and so many people that need to be like in the loop, and sometimes it's like, I don't know. It's just prolific, and everything has to be. They did have Slack, and some things can be done there, but in terms of keeping everybody on the same page and everything, and if you have these big initiatives that you're constantly chipping away at, you have to have meetings. So, and
Mm.
then our team had a daily stand-up meeting, which was maybe a half hour every day, and
Right. And you were fully remote?
fully remote. Yeah, yeah. They're
Yep.
based out of Austin, but none of my team was all acquired, and so everyone was from somewhere else. So we
Right.
were all remote.
And their whole culture at the company is like mostly remote with a headquarters in Austin.
They had a big headquarters when I joined, and then COVID hit, and I think a lot of people went remote. But I actually don't know if they went back. I would be surprised if they didn't. It was a pretty large
Huh.
headquarters, but they were
Yeah.
really cool about like they weren't one of those companies that were like, wow, we're going to keep people here until they die of COVID or whatever. It was just like right away they were like, you do what you want. We're highly efficient and remote company anyway. They're a
Yeah.
global company, so they have to be remote. But
So I want to start to like maybe like bridge the gap to back toward present
mhm,
day, and as you start to make the transition, I'm curious about a couple different things. One is like maybe some prep work, how you start to think about while you were still at WP Engine, projects and planning for what your next
yep.
chapter would look like, and then actually getting into it. But maybe before we leave this like corporate life stuff, like are there, you started to talk about it a little bit, like communicating in systems. Are there any like nuggets or work practices or anything that you've been able to take with you into your work today that you think are really helpful, that maybe most indie makers like myself, like since I don't have exposure to a big organization, like maybe there are some blind spots that I don't have, like
Hmm.
um or that I have, like what, any thoughts come to mind?
That's a tough question, because I learned a ton in the way of um, like I said, leadership, leading a team, and sort of helping people one up and get to the next level, and communicating in that system was all that. But once you leave and go back to the lifestyle we leave now, it is so different that it's like, yeah, I want to say there's parts of the communication side of things, and maybe some kind of littler things in the product space, but because the kinds of products that I'm interested in making now are kind of below the threshold that they had there, it's like we didn't work on that kind of stuff, and so I didn't learn a ton about that. But I would say what's super valuable is that I was able to work up into a principal level position that gave me like a lot of influence and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of kind of I don't know, it just gave me a lot to work with in terms of like if I was to ever go back into that world again, I could slide in like no problem, and I
Yeah.
would know how to work in that system in a way that like it took me
And
4 years to learn.
yeah, and like how like kind of like the cultural kind of stuff works.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
I think for someone like me, it would probably be a bit of a shock to like get into that sort of
Oh
system.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, but I do, one thing I do remember, because I went out on my own about 15 years ago, and before that, I worked for like two web design agencies in New York. Doing like pretty high profile, like large brand name websites and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember transitioning to becoming just a solo freelance web designer back in like 2008 or something. And but one of the things that I noticed was that like at least I had that experience of working with an established agency with like high level clients, and the whole process
Hmm.
of taking a client from proposal to design to build to launch, and like communicating with clients and sort of billing. And I wasn't involved in all that, all the mechanics there, but I saw it, and
Right.
I played a role in it. And so then when I went out on my own, I, like my projects were much smaller, much lower stakes and everything, but I had a lot of structure. And I think that there was like a level of professionalism and reliability that I took with me.
Sure.
And I started to notice that, especially when I started to hire other contractors and other freelancers. Um,
Hmm.
in my projects as a consultant, I would assemble other designers and developers to try to scale up a little bit beyond just myself. And I noticed that like while some people did some great work, they lacked a lot of like the reliability and like hitting
Right.
deadlines or like communicating clearly, that like that kind of stuff just wouldn't have, it just wouldn't fly
Yep.
at an established agency. But there's a lot of folks who just don't have that sort of professional background
Totally.
here in the indie world, and it can
That's
be
a
kind of
great point.
frustrating sometimes. Even
Uh,
even super talented people, they don't have that like reliability factor.
hmm That's a great point. It's you do have to operate on the level when you're in that space, because that's the business world, and um, the people who don't, you fall by the wayside, you lose your job, you don't get promoted, like that's just the way it goes. And so
Yep.
that, and like I would say just overall confidence. Like I've learned so much in the past 4 years of that job and everything before that. Like I came out with that with a confidence that like I can build anything, and that's not
Yeah.
being like, I'm not trying to be cocky or anything like that. It's just like I'm not afraid of building anything, is
Yeah.
maybe a better way to put it. It's like have all the skills that I possibly could need to build something, and the professionalism to bring it to market.
Best thing about what we do in this craft is like we could, and that's literally if you need to boil down our skill of designing and building software or websites, it's like
mhm.
figure out how to build anything,
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So you're past your initial 18 months in WP Engine. You're into the later years or you're still there, but you're starting to set your sights on like going back out on your own.
Oh yeah.
What are some of the things like before you actually left that you start to think about like what your next chapter could look like? Maybe some of the side projects that you were doing while you were still there. What did that look like?
Yeah, so I as we've talked about, I've made my way in WordPress, and with them going through the big transition to the site editor and block editor, I've had this conversation with a few people, because I operate in WordPress, but I'm all over the place. I work with a lot of Laravel folks. I work in React and the JavaScript world too, and so some people, when I talk to them, they're like, how are you still, like, what are you messing around with WordPress for? Because it's like kind of the problem child of the internet.
I'll be honest.
Um,
I sort of wondered the same thing when I saw you working on Ollie. I was like,
yeah,
oh, he's still going strong with WordPress. Okay.
yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing. Let's talk about that for a second, because
Yeah.
uh, to me, it seems obvious, because number one, I have an audience there, right? I mean, I have a
Sure.
concentrated audience in the WordPress space. People know me. I'm trusted. I've had a successful exit there. I've built several products that became very popular and were sold. Um, so I have
And
that
WordPress
going
is
for them.
still massive.
Oh my
Like
God. And
it's
that's,
still huge. Yeah.
it's undeniably the leader of like building websites. I don't even know how many websites a day are launched with it. Hundreds, maybe thousands of websites a day. It's downloaded an insane
What's
amount
the
every second. It's like,
what's like that percentage that keeps getting thrown, or like percentage of the internet that runs on WordPress? That number just keeps getting higher and higher, right? I forgot
yeah,
what it is now.
it's like 60 or close to 60, I think. So,
Crazy.
even I think last year, or maybe the year before, um, the growth kind of plateaued a little bit, and it was funny to like see people like, oh, it's plateaued. It's plateaued at 800 million websites
Right.
and growing still. It's like, okay, I think
Yeah.
we're but
And like
and
whatever the
so
number two is, I don't know what it is, like Shopify or
yeah,
something. It's like
yeah. Oh
1% of
my
that.
God.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like 1%. And so
Yeah.
I'm not here to say that WordPress is the greatest tool and it's the best thing for every project, or that I agree with 100% with all the changes that are going into it. But I am here to say, as a creator and a product maker and an opportunist and a technologist, I look at this unshaped form of WordPress and this market that's totally like growing like molasses, because there's no product leaders in it. I look at that as like a massive opportunity, and I say
Mm.
like, okay, thousands of people are still downloading WordPress every day, and what they're getting when they install it is the new block editor and the new site editor and a new paradigm of building. um, there's not a lot of competition in this space. I've been in this space before. I've operated here. I've had success here. To me, it seems like, okay, no, I can create something in this space and probably lead and probably have another successful exit at some point.
When you
And,
say it's not very competitive,
mhm.
um, I mean, which part of it is not competitive? Is it like the block edit, non like unofficial block editor tools, CMS tools, or because there's still
Yeah.
like the big players like the WP engines and
Mhm.
and whatever else is out there in terms of, I'm so unfamiliar with the WordPress ecosystem, but
Yep. I would say the product ecosystem. So like there's the whole side of like hosting and stuff like that to get your website. And
yeah.
then there's like products like form plugins and there's page builders and there's all of these other tools that are like to the tune of billions of dollars of
Yep.
a WordPress market. And so there's a lot of these little tools that you add to your website to make them better. And so some of these things are not
I see
as
what you're saying.
relevant
Yeah.
anymore because WordPress itself has kind of become a page builder in a way. You can visually build things in there that has all your settings. You can change the fonts. You can do all this cool stuff.
And it is
Um,
interesting that a lot of the, like the bigger these product companies have become, like you were acquired, your thing was acquired by WP Engine a couple of years before, like in the last couple of years, there's been a whole string of big acquisitions and
oh yeah,
consolidation
for sure.
in WordPress products. So, and some of them are like being acquired by the WP Engines and by GoDaddies
Oh yeah,
and so you're starting to see these like well-established products that are sort of on a path to what happened with Atomic Blocks,
yep.
which creates new opportunities for new upstart products. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, like these companies, they're not building internally, they're buying externally.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, as again, looking at this whole thing as an opportunity, it's like, well, I can build a thing a lot faster with, I have a partner on Ollie, uh, a lot faster than they can build it internally. And they have a lot more money that they would love to throw at these things. I'm not even saying that I'm looking to like build it to sell it, but that's the reality is that it's a possibility. And
Yep.
that's just another part of my calculus of like building in this space still. It seems so obvious to me that there's a huge opportunity here in so many ways. And two, like I left WP Engine with an insane amount of creative energy to like
Yeah.
build something.
I'm just
And
like picturing you like constantly coming up with like shiny object ideas, putting them in a big
oh my
list, and
god,
like someday
it's
I'm going to build that. I'm going to build that. I'm going to build that.
it's like a meme in this household. My wife's like, she's like, you got to stop working on that one. You got to focus.
Right.
Um, but I'm a designer at heart, and WordPress has always like kind of been kind of clunky in design and stuff. And so I'm on a mission to bring like high fidelity, incredible design to WordPress via Ollie and these things called patterns are just like page templates and little page sections and things like that. And so if I can bring that level of fidelity to WordPress in this time where it's going through this transition,
Oh,
um,
we just lost your connection there. Oh, yeah, you're coming back. Okay.
okay,
Sorry.
cool. That's what I'm interested in doing. You know, for all the downsides of WordPress, it's still growing. NASA's launching their website on it. The White House has their website on it. It's still the like de facto option for big and small business. And so I'm going to operate here, and maybe this might be my last kind of hurrah in WordPress. I might make this
Hmm.
last Ollie thing, and if it's successful and I can go off and do other things, that's cool. But so for me,
So
it makes a lot of sense.
it totally does. All right. So tell me a little bit more about Ollie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the how is it structured as a product, as a business?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like there's like a core sort of framework, and then you're selling add-ons on top of that? Like, what's the pricing model? Yeah,
Yep.
kind of give us the rundown.
Yeah. So WordPress, everyone knows what WordPress themes are. They are just like templates you add to your site, and you can change the look and feel of it. Well, now they have these things called block themes, which are similar, except that now you can modify all of parts of the theme, the design, the fonts, the colors, everything. You can do it visually in the WordPress editor. And so the block theme sits on your site and it acts basically like kind of like a style guide. And it comes with all these styles. And like I said earlier, it has templates in there and has these things called patterns. And patterns are going to be a huge part of WordPress because it's like pre-made designs, right? It's like
Hmm.
a pattern can be a call to action box. It could be a hero header section, or it could be a full page pattern that you just click, spits it onto your page. You change the content, you hit publish, and you're done. You don't have to, there's no code. If you don't want to mess with code, you could just design it in there and ship it. And so Ollie right now is just an open source free block theme. And it's basically like if anyone knows the kind of products I create, they're very meticulously designed and coded so that they're very robust. They're easy to learn from. That's another thing about Ollie is it's very educational in nature because
Hmm.
if I'm going to make a product in this space that is still forming itself, I have to educate people along the way on how to use this stuff. And so
Right.
that's a huge part of it.
How different is the Ollie open source block theme from what a new user of plain vanilla WordPress is going to get like out of the box?
It's so it integrates like seamlessly with WordPress. So anyone
Mhm.
who's using the new, like if you install WordPress today, that's the experience you're getting with Ollie. It's just kind of like it's just a presentation layer basically for it.
Mhm.
So it gives you all the colors and everything with it, and gives you, I think I have like 50 patterns in there. So beautiful little patterns that you can add. Another thing, like I said earlier about the slow adoption of this stuff is like some of this stuff is harder than it used to be in WordPress. Creating themes in code was one thing. Creating them this way is a little more meticulous. But the benefit is once it's in the editor, it's a lot easier for the end user to customize. But
Mhm.
um, I see that as like that might be saying that like there's not going to be a lot of people creating these things. Maybe I'm not sure. It's too early to say. So again, part of my calculus is like, well, I'll make one, and I will make it awesome, and I will
Yeah.
put it out there for free, and then people can learn from that, and they could use me as like a trusted source to learn from.
Interesting.
And so that's like Ollie free. That's just out there for free to learn from and to build websites, free stuff. And
Yeah.
then Pro, which I'm hoping to release in Q1, we'll see. You know how that goes. Pro is it just adds more. We have a cloud library essentially, which is all of these beautiful designs, hundreds of them that live in the cloud. You could pull them down to your site, add them to your theme. You can insert it into your page. You can add it. You can favorite them. So you can log into different sites and have your favorites. And it's
Mm.
just another kind of uh, I don't know. It's just like a seamless layer that kind of integrates in WordPress. It feels like it's supposed to be in WordPress, but it's not. It's something we created custom.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just if you were to synthesize it down, I'm just bringing badass design to WordPress, and it's in
Yeah.
an intuitive. It's
I
coming in
love
an
it.
intuitive layer that has not been seen in a long time. All these
I mean, for
clunk.
me as a user who's been sort of like driven away from WordPress, it's
Yeah.
for me it's like number one, the clunky design and
Oh
experience of using the interface.
man.
And number two, I think part of it was like the whole shift to the block editor in WordPress.
Hmm.
What I don't know if they still call it Gutenberg anymore, but like I feel like when they started introducing the idea of Gutenberg, which I guess now is the block editor,
Yeah.
um, that was around the time, I don't know, 5, 8, 9 years ago that I started to migrate away from it.
Yeah.
Um, and also like page builders in general. This is like me personally for my own websites, for my own products. Every time I used a page builder or even any like robust theme in WordPress, I end up hacking it apart and wanting to get into
Oh
the
man.
HTML, the CSS myself,
Totally.
and like all the CMS custom building options tend to just add so much bloat and slow down the whole, at least the
Totally.
admin interface, but also the front end. Um, I, I'd imagine that all this stuff is getting more and more efficient
Yeah.
and kind of streamlined. But where I could really see something like Ollie, I'm sure you're thinking about this, is like there's such a massive, and there always has been this massive ecosystem of freelancers and agencies and consultants who are just churning out websites for clients,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I could totally see where, and I'm already seeing this with agencies like having their own kind of template system and modular component systems that they could just deploy for 50, 100 client websites a year,
Oh yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and I could see something like Ollie being that like layer to sort of manage and like really streamline the website
Oh
design
yeah.
delivery service for clients, right?
Yeah, and I agree completely. There's been multiple spells where I was just over WordPress because the gift and the curse of open source is that anyone can create products for it, and they can do whatever they want. They can modify the interface, they can throw notices or ads at you, they can do all kinds of weird redirects and everything, and like
Yeah.
that's just part of it. And so
Like you install one random plugin and it adds like a whole new version of like jQuery to your site. And it's
oh
like,
yeah,
what's
and
happening?
then
Yeah.
that breaks your other plugin that you had installed, which is also old and outdated, and like so it's incredibly frustrating. And so I feel people's pain on that end. I will say that now that the block editor's been in there for several years, the interface is getting a lot better. They're also in the midst of a like whole admin refresh, so that's going to look a lot and feel a lot better. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it's interesting because I don't know. Who knows who WordPress is for anymore? For people like you and me, like who want a lot more fine tuned control. Maybe it's not for those folks anymore. But
Yeah,
um,
that's how I sort of see it. It's like I don't see myself really using it for any of my needs, but I could totally see it for like larger companies who need a more popular uh established solution like
yeah.
WordPress,
Hmm.
and agencies who are churning out a lot of websites for
Oh yeah.
clients. You
Hmm.
know, like for
Oh
me,
yeah.
I for personal stuff, I've just used like static stuff. Lately, I've been getting really into using Statamic as my
Yeah.
CMS,
I love that.
because it's totally I can customize it as much as I want and get my hands dirty. But then when my marketer or VA needs to log in, they have an interface that they can log into. I just had Jack McDade on this show like 2 episodes before
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Um,
Statimic's awesome.
yeah. Um, so you're in the midst of like building out this Ollie product. You're launching probably around the time this episode will come out. So that's pretty exciting. That's over at
Hmm.
that's olliewp.com. We'll get everything
Hmm.
linked up.
Yep.
One of the original things why I actually invited you on this show. I didn't expect to spend so much time talking about like WordPress and WP Engine and all that, but
Hmm.
you and I worked together on the Clarity Flow brand and the website design. That was a really fun project. I think really
Yeah.
successful. And I've seen you do a bunch of these other, really high quality kind of consulting projects over the past year, um, doing that like brand design
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like what your mix of projects has looked like?
Hmm.
Kind of shifting between hacking on this Ollie product, and taking in some pretty good consulting work. What's that looking like?
Yep. So yeah, when I left WP Engine, obviously I left my cushy salary behind, and with it the all the benefits and insurance and everything. So, I've saved well over the year, and over the years I'm okay. But I like to stay busy, and want to bring some money in. And at the end of the day, like I'm a designer. That's what I do. I'm a designer. I always have been. I have waded into development and marketing and videography and everything in between, but all in the pursuit of design and bringing design to market. And so,
Mm-hmm.
coming out of WP Engine again, like I said, I had so much creative energy, and I ran into you right away, and we did that project. And I was like hooked. I was like, no, I want to do this for a bit, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a good way to bring in some cash to bootstrap Ollie, which is doesn't make any money yet. And I've always bootstrapped, which is funny. It's funny with like the Atomic Blocks thing. I got that got acquired right away, and I put up Ollie and started doing some initial stuff there. Put the free version out there, and I had instantly multiple investors ping me about like
Really?
investing in it, and I was like, I think I learned a little bit of a lesson here with the WP Engine thing. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna hold off for now, and I'm gonna build
Let's
this thing
take it
out,
slow. Yeah.
and I'm gonna let my
And
vision
you
get out
have
there.
that runway freedom, financial freedom to
Yeah,
like take
exactly.
be
So,
strategic, take your time, do things
hmm
how you want to do them.
that's right. So anyway, yeah, it was really cool to run into you and do that project, because we had been like mutual friends online for years, and so
Yeah.
to work on that was really cool. And then after that, I was just lucky to run into a bunch of really cool, like actually Jason Beggs, who developed Clarity Flow. He introduced me to all kinds of different people. I met Aaron Francis, and I designed the screencasting.com site,
Oh, that's
and
right. Yeah.
then that was hugely successful. I did the site and the branding for that, And then I did this site called Lunar, and then Jason developed that as well, lunar.app, I think it is. And all kinds of really cool stuff. I just finished up one for this site called Clearstream. And, I
It
don't
seems
want to
like
toot
you're
my
at
own horn,
this
but
you're at this like really cool place in your design career where you have this amazing track record and
mm-hmm.
and a lot of public work out there. So people know you for
Yeah,
the level of quality and success of your projects, which I'm sure brings a plenty of like word of mouth leads for consulting projects, but also gives you the freedom to be pretty selective on what you get
yeah.
to take on. You know.
Yeah, and I feel totally privileged in that way, and that I've just kind of hopped from one project to the next, and just referrals and people reaching out to me, which is incredible because I when I was probably in the midst of the WP Engine stuff, I would just daydream about like I would just love to just design for a living, to just when you're in that system and it's so complex, technically complex, and then so many dependencies and people and this to just sit around and push pixels around seemed like incredible. It's like
Yeah.
easy almost. It's like the stakes are so much lower and like
Hmm.
the day to day is so much yeah. So to hop out of that world and then be lucky enough to hit those string of really cool projects and run into some cool people. I feel totally privileged to have done that. And I don't take it for granted, which is why when I take on these projects, I give everything. I put as much work into it as if it's one of my own things that I'm bringing to market, and I think that's why I get these results that are super high fidelity and kind of speak to the brand that I'm working for, and it all
Hmm.
just works. And that comes with a lot of trust from the founders as well. Like you gave me so much freedom with the Clarity Flow brand and the site to try some different things and some fun things, and it turned out incredible in my opinion. It looks great.
I
It's
completely agree. It was that was one of the coolest parts about working with you on that project was that like I already knew your track record and design skill going in,
mm-hmm.
and it was and for that reason like that's what made the whole thing attractive to me. It was like, all right, let me just put it into the hands of someone who can like do it so much better than I personally can, and I won't need to like micromanage the process. So
Yeah,
it was
but you're
perfect.
also like design minded, and so that helps shape it in a way that keeps it in your vision,
Yep.
but with like my aesthetic or whatever. So, and I've after same thing with Aaron Francis. He gave me just so much runway to be like, do whatever, and then he gave me some guidelines along the way, and that's really nice when you can find design minded founders because um, it's better when it's a partnership. You feel more confident at the end, where it's like, no, we crafted this thing together.
That's the thing. Again, this is why I'm reaching out to folks like you right now to have these sort of conversations, because I'm in this mode here in 2024 where I'm starting to shift back into projects with clients for the first
Mm-hmm.
time in years. Like I went so many years of just
Yeah,
being a product person, um, and now I'm doing some projects where it's like kind of full stack. Let's build like an MVP type product
yeah,
for most of these, and I really like what you have going in terms of like these like kind of high caliber consulting relationships where there's just
mm-hmm.
this level of trust on both ends. And what I think that results in, like you're describing, is that this like for you creatively, um, you can work on something as if it's your own product. And I'm
Yeah,
starting to find that myself with some like when for years I sort of like feared the idea of going back into consulting because then it's like, oh, that feels just like a job, just doing stuff that I don't really care about.
totally.
But what I'm actually finding is that like actually working on really cool products with really cool people gets my creative juices and energy
Oh
going
yeah,
just as much as it does if it's my own product, you know?
absolutely. And it goes both ways. It's kind of like you're building your creative muscles. So when you go back to your projects, you go back with maybe something you took from that thing or some a little more confidence
Yep.
or whatever. And I felt the same way. I wasn't sure about going to work in the client world, but I found that like, well, I was lucky enough to run into people who trusted me. But I think part of that is like over the years doing everything I can to make sure my work is like unimpeachably good to my standards, which are high,
Yep.
and
Yep.
just kind of generally accepted. And so when I go into a project, I go with a little more confidence than I used to, where it's like, no, I can do this. I can get you something killer out of this,
Hmm.
partnership. We just have to, work together to get there. And that's hard. It's a hard place to get to. It takes a long time, and you have to find the right partners too. But man, once you get there, it's incredible because you do feel like this new sense of creation and freedom and partnership, and it can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, here we're recording this in like early 2024. It's been about a
Mhm.
year now for you being out on your own. You've been working on Ollie. You've been doing these
Yep.
consulting projects. Um, what does the mix look like for you going forward into the rest of this year, into next year? It this client consulting stuff. Do you see yourself trying to phase that out again and focus more on products, or keeping a mix going? What are you thinking there?
I'll probably keep a mix because, at least in the short term, I will, because I do like, I love having building a portfolio of this stuff, and making different things and being challenged in different
Yep.
ways. And also, it's still helping me pay the bills and bootstrap. Right now, I only take on one project at a time, like one client project at a time, because
Right.
I go hard on client projects. I put everything into it, so I can't contextually jump between multiple anyway.
Hmm.
And I want to get something that's like really good out of it. So I just give myself the affordance of like, this is what I'm working on. And
Yeah, I'm usually
then
the same way with projects that jumping, because like the creative process, like the energy starts to feed on itself, and it has this momentum like
absolutely.
day to day over the course of a month or so. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another thing that I found very hard at WP Engine is the constant context switching. It frazzles your brain in a way that like
Hmm.
it makes it so hard to get anything done. So yeah, if I can sit and just be like, this is the project I'm working on, this is the aesthetic my mindset is in, I know the typography of this project, I know the colors and how these things fit together. That just makes everything so much easier, especially when you're doing a dozen pages. It's like, well, no, I can just design this whole thing kind of
Yeah,
cohesively.
and that's also the beauty of bootstrapping your own
Yeah,
products, and self funding them. Um, and that's one of the things that I've sort of come back around. I took a bit of investment on Clarity Flow, and now I'm back to like full
yeah,
sort of bootstrapper mindset, for that reason, where it's like you can go as slow as you want to on Ollie or whatever
yeah,
product or products you want to get into. Like the level of urgency is not there when you can jump between, okay, for this month or next month I'm going to do this consulting project, and then I'm going to kind of hop back on Ollie for a bit, and like
yep.
uh,
Yeah, it's
yeah, very
incredible
cool.
to the freedom of bootstrapping is great. Obviously, there's a pressing nature to it to get it to market and to
Sure.
validate it and get it there. But for me, as a creative, I love being able to take the time to craft even just a tiny UI to how I feel like it should be, because I know that it's solving a problem. That's, and you're the same way. Like, you have to steep yourself in the problem to understand it deeply.
Yep.
And that was like, working at WP Engine was kind of tough because you have the VP who may not be spending a lot of time looking at the problems on a minute scale.
Yep.
And so that's tough. But like, I'm in there every day. I know the problems and I'm capable of creating a solution for it. And so um, that's the stuff that when you release it, it connects with people because they're like, oh shit, there's an emotion of the problem being solved that is kind of like a dopamine hit when somebody
Yeah,
solves that little problem for you.
for
And
sure.
so yeah, it's that's the kind of stuff. So anyway, just back around to the mix. So I take on one project at a time, and then with my free time, I work on Ollie. I have a partner who's he's doing all largely the development on this thing, and
Yeah,
I
how'd that
do
come about? I don't think I know him.
his name's Patrick Posner. He has a popular product in the WordPress space that helps you generate a static website. You can just click a few
Okay.
buttons, generates a static website, which is a lot faster and all that stuff. I ran
Very
into
cool.
him working with the Lemon Squeezy
Oh,
people.
okay.
So I was working with them when they first launched. I was doing some video content and guides and marketing stuff, and just kind of
Oh, wow.
helping them out on the side. And I know all those people from the WordPress space. Almost all of them came from
Yeah,
WordPress, which
Jason
is funny.
Schuler
Yeah,
and a bunch of other ones. Yeah,
Gilbert, Orman Clark,
yep.
JR Farr, like all those
That's like
guys.
a it's like a dream team of
Oh yeah,
partnership
it's
that came together on
incredible.
that one. Yeah,
And now their product is like on top of the world.
yeah, fantastic.
They've totally taken over, and they had the vision. I knew it was going to get there, which is why I was working with them, trying to get it off the ground. And so, yeah, they're incredible. Anyway, I met Patrick. He was kind of helping over there. They were trying to do some like WordPress integration stuff, and I met him, and it was just a good partnership because not all developers or not all people are like make great partners. You have to align on
Yep,
vision. And he
yep.
shared a lot of the same frustrations and visions that I did about how to solve them. And so
Hmm.
we did that. And so, yeah, that's
Nice.
where we're at.
Good stuff.
Yeah, man.
And in terms of like your product portfolio, like Ollie is basically the thing, or do you have like other ideas that you want to get into?
I mean, I have tons, but I'm forcing my. I also had a baby boy in October,
Oh, okay. There's a
so
product to work
I have
on
a
every
four
now and
month
then.
old. I'm co-founder on that product. Will keep me busy, and so I've
Yep.
just forced myself to say, no, I'm focusing on this one thing. But all these beautiful designs that I'm making in Figma for the Ollie collection, I'm also going to turn them into Tailwind templates so that
Oh, love
people
it.
can put them in whatever platform they want. Because I was like looking at these things like these are great. It's kind of a shame to just like wedge them into WordPress and then. So I
Yeah.
think I
Just
mentioned
released the front end version. Yeah.
yep, to Jason Beggs, and he might help me convert them, and we'll turn that into maybe another little. So squeezing the little bit extra out of the
Yeah.
design.
Like
So
Ollie instead of Ollie WP, like Ollie CSS or something like that.
yeah, yeah, Ali TW or something. Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, man.
Mike, your work is always super impressive. I'm going to be following along as always. And I don't know, Ollie. I maybe one of my next sites. I might actually do it in WordPress because of Ollie. So that'll be cool. I don't
Yeah,
know.
dude. It's
We'll see.
it's I will say like the future is bright for WordPress in its own way, and I'll be around for a little bit of it. We'll see.
Yeah, this is fun. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, dude. Thanks so much.